Hi, I'm Maria Kelly. I am your PPA instructor, right, for LIC C215. And I just wanted to kind of, since this is an online class, one, offer weekly videos, which I think is wonderful, just a great way to connect. Two, I like to kind of go side by side with my PowerPoint. Just gives you an extra information that, I usually would be able to do in class, which is, what I get to do with my students that are face to face. And so we're just going to go through it. You're probably going to have a ton of questions. This course is writing intensive. It is hard. You cannot, dish this out in one night. And if you do, it'll be super obvious when you start working on these essays. So please, I encourage you to start setting up your weeks so that you are giving yourself 3-4 days to work on writing. Do a little bit, do a section, step away, come back, do a section, step away, come back. It'll be very helpful. It's very beneficial. I've been teaching here at George Fox. This will be the beginning of my 5th year. And I tried to create a really simple format for students to follow, but it requires a lot of time and a lot of effort. And students are getting credits. A lot of my students, if they do what I ask them to do, to continue to show up and work hard, they are getting those 2 to 3 credits per essay. And that's the goal. For each essay that you write, you are getting 2 to 3 credits. And I have examples from previous students that have submitted and got credit. You also have the PLA student guide, which is on our Foxtail resources link. It'll say PLA student guide. You click on that, there are essays, examples on there. All of those students have received credit. Some of them are my students, some of them are students from other instructors. They've all received credit. Now this PLA student guide is not like how to write a perfect essay. They are all examples for discussion. So let's be really clear. Students really appreciate when I tell them this student guide, they're examples for discussion. They're not examples on how to write a perfect essay. That is why you take this course and continue to work on it and figure out the best way for you to receive the maximum amount of credit for each essay that you write. Okay, so starting off, cold model. This was the first assignment we have. And I ask you this week to create an example of what you think the cold model looks like based on just any experience. You could use, learning how to make a sandwich, or explaining how you use the cold model for something like, public speaking, or I've had some students teaching somebody how to snowboard. So figuring out a way how you understand the cold model and be able to explain it to me using just an everyday simple example. And the cold model is what we use to kind of understand and be able to explain and prove your transformative experience to be worthy of college credit, right? So baby steps, we're gonna work on this first, cold model. And then also I kind of talk a little bit about the PPA, getting the essay overview, and I promise you all this information seems to be a lot. So feel free to pause or watch it all the way through and then go back and, watch it a few times, but you will feel extremely overwhelmed. And for some people, they're like, oh, I just get this. It makes sense to me. And other people are like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And that's okay. By the end of 8 weeks, you will know what to do. And you have me, you have the Writing Center, and just because we're online doesn't mean we can't connect, via Zoom, email, or phone call. We could totally do that. I'm available. I'm here. Okay, so cold model. I guess I could tell you a little bit about myself. One, my name's Maria Kelly. I've been teaching adults since 2008. I went to Willamette University for both my degrees, and I have a sociology and an English background. And I went off and started teaching adults in 2008 overseas in South Korea. And then I came back and I had 3 kids here in Portland, and I kind of just did the stay-at-home mom thing for a while, and then I got connected with Jenny Harrop, Dr. Harrop, and she's like, "I'd really like you to come work at George Fox and teach our writing courses," and that's what I've been doing the last 4 full years, and I'm starting my 5th year. So I do the full-time mom thing with my kids during the day, and then I get to teach at night or online with the ADP program. So that's a little bit about me. And our syllabus is online, so you can look through that, and you kind of get the whole point of the course is to, by the end of your 8 weeks here, you will have written 3 papers that you can use to submit for additional elective credit. And the essays are about 8 to 10 pages long. So just be prepared for that. I try to section them off so it kind of feels like you're writing, 4 mini papers, and then collectively 1 paper is 8 to 10 pages. So you will do that 3 times in my class, and so you'll be able to submit those once you have completed this course and have passed it. Then you have a year to submit as many essays as you would like for credit, which just goes to elective credit. So they don't go like, if you write an essay and you submit it to the business department, it doesn't go towards your business elective. It's just general electives. So I just wanted to clear that up because a lot of people get confused about how the credit process works. So you do get to decide what department you want to submit your essay to, whether you feel like this really fits a psychology department or this fits like a health and exercise science. Whatever credits you get from them, they still just go into the big pool of elective credits. Okay, let's see what else we have here. The way the course is going to be, the class assignment layout is, like for this week, we have the cold model assignment. And then after that, we start working on our essays right away. So I have you do an outline, and then an essay 1, outline for number 2, essay 2, outline for number 3, essay 3. And the reason why I have you work on outlines is because your essays are 8 to 10 pages long. And they're all based off of section 3, which is your, learning objectives. And that takes time to kind of figure out and write and figure out how to adequately support it academically. And if you kind of make any changes, which you will, especially your first essay, as you make changes to that, it changes the rest of your paper. So if you write a rough draft and you do all 8 to 10 pages, and I ask you to shift things around, change your learning outcomes, change how you're explaining this, it shifts all the other components of your essay, and then you're left with having to rewrite an entirely new paper. And I don't want to waste your time. So I like to kind of create a short outline that focuses on your learning outcomes and really narrows on the verbiage and how you academically support it. And so that way, if you do make any changes, it's just that section, and then you get to start working on the other ones, but you don't have to rewrite the whole thing. So that's how I like to approach it. It saves you time, saves me time, and we really hone in on how to properly write your learning objectives, your LOs, I like to call them, and how you support it. And it kind of really makes it easier. It makes it easier to write the other sections of your paper because you have such a clear vision based on your abstract learning outcomes. So that's what I like to do. Okay, so your PLAs, right, prior learning essays, you're doing it to earn, credit, extra credit, but they have to be something that you learned as an adult, not as a kid. So the experience could happen to you as a kid, but the learning, which is the transformative piece, has to happen as an adult, which means like 18 and older. So for example, I've had a student who was adopted, and she didn't really understand that adoption process until later in life, say like in her 20s. And she kind of focused her paper on that learning process, what she learned in her 20s that transformed her life based off of something that kind of happened to her when she was younger. So that's something that you can learn, that you can use. But for the most part, your learning has to take place as an adult. So for veterans, when they've gone to boot camp or have served, a term in the military, there's learning that takes place there. I mean, learning takes place in all facets. It can be as basic as learning how to garden. I had a student write an essay about gardening. She had never grown a backyard, all organic garden. And it was transformative to her because she had to learn about researching. She had to learn about, trial and error. And these were things that she just didn't really get until she started this process. And so that's another piece to the essay, is that it has to be something that you didn't know beforehand. So you can't say, oh, I had to learn all about organizing again. If you're a very organized person when you were 18, 19, and then you just kind of forgot and just didn't think about it and then started doing it again in your 30s. It does not work. So it has to be something that you've never really done before and you never had time to reflect on and figure out, because that's basically what explains transformation, is you didn't know, this happened, and then you had to figure it out. So another example is I've had students who took a job and then 3 months into their job, their boss quits, or their manager, and they had to step in and take that role. And they had no idea what they were doing, and they had to figure it out. And so that was a very transformative time on learning how to build a team and be a leader or be a mentor. And so that's a great essay because it's clear line. I started working at Blockbuster. The next month, my manager quit and I became the site manager. You're like, whoa, what do I do? And so kind of going through all of that. And it all has to be connected, to learning, and that would be valuable in, say, a business 215 class or a psychology, 310 class. So that's kind of the basis of the essays. When you look at your time frame window, it has to be as an adult, has to be transformative, and it has to be clear about when an event happened and the transformation began and what you learned. So that's kind of basically, you are proving to yourself, you're proving to the faculty member, I don't have to take your business 215 class because what I learned at my year at Blockbuster being the site manager, it covered this one course. And that's basically the trade that you're making. You're telling them, I don't have to take your course because I learned this between the ages of, 20 and 22. That's essentially what it is. They have to be transformative, which I said, that has to be an impact and changed you and definitely shows, new growth, new education, new learning, and that it's worthy of college credit. So that's that's our goal, our focus. Okay, so we work on these essays, you create them, you pass the class, you polish them up, and you submit them. You have 12 months from the course, from taking the course. You have 12 months to submit as many essays as you want for credit. They go to a professor, a GFU professor, and they evaluate it in that department. So if you send it to a psychology professor evaluates it, gets it back to you, and they'll give you, a credit score. So it'll say, 2 credits, 2.5 credits, 3 credits. Sometimes you can get a rewrite and they'll say, oh, you're between 2 and 3 credits. I really feel like you could rewrite this section or explain more into the detail this section. You could get 3 credits. That's happened before. The credits just show up on your transcript. I believe it's like the name of your essay in the credits. And that's kind of how it goes. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks for that to happen. Again, this is all on your student guide. So PLA student guide, if you go to George Fox and you talk to Courtney Elrod, she can actually give you a manual one that you can have with you, a tangible one. If you're fine with the online version, keep the online version. So it's totally your preference. But if you're at George Fox for another class, you could go into her office and ask her for one. She'll get you one. Okay, so writing, you have, 3 papers we're going to write. They're about 8 to 10 pages long. You don't have to use research to support your life learning experiences, like for section 3. However, I have had students have success with writing their LOs, which are 3 to 5 LOs in section 3, abstract generalizations, and have had great success when they use support from external sources. Because if you're saying something like, I learned the importance of vulnerability in communication, and you explain how and why that's important, and you use Brene Brown to back you up, it's kind of hard to, debunk or to refute, because you're finding this to be true and you're explaining why it's important, and you're also finding another reliable and credible source to back you up. So strength in numbers, it's difficult for them to turn you down saying, no, that's not credit worthy, when you offer a clear line of explanation and then you offer a credible source to back you up. That aligns perfectly with that LO. So that's why I like to use research to back your claim, because it's harder to refute. But it's not required. It's a strong urge from my side. And I will offer you examples of students that have done it and they receive credit for it. So we also work on writing clear, simple, and organized essays. I am a junk eliminator. I don't like fluff. I don't like junk. I like clean and clear and coherent sentences. Because it sounds weird, but you only have 8 to 10 pages to get this succinct and clear. And you need to make it so all of the sections align, and being able to do that means you need to focus on your transformation and remove all the fluff. It's not like a creative writing piece. It's very specific to the experience, and you need those pages to make it clear. And then just using, a lot of students like this class because they get to discover new growth about themselves that maybe they didn't realize. And just exploring your LOs and figuring all of that out is really cool. So a lot of students like this course because it gives them time and space to reflect on interesting and difficult experiences, but that positivity comes from it and growth. So it's cool. That's good. Okay, so preparation. I highly recommend for this course that you set aside time every day. And I know that might not be possible for some of you based on your work schedules, but making sure there are at least 3 to 4 days each week that you set aside to work. Doing the reading Zinsser, which his reading is quick, it's funny, it's witty, it's entertaining. A lot of students like this book because he offers a different side to writing than most instructors or other experiences that you had. He talks about getting rid of all the fluff and the crap and just focusing on like, what do you want to say to your audience and what's the best way to say it to your audience. Forget about everybody else, but you're talking to this group and what do they need to hear and how do they need to hear it in the best format possible. So again, just taking time set aside to write, to be removed, go to work, take care of your family, take care of you, go exercise, hang out with friends, come back, and then look at your writing again. And do that over and over because you're going to need the break, the mental break. It's exhausting. So I encourage lots of breaks. Okay, so that is kind of what the overview of our course is. Now, the cold model research is, looking through the links and figuring out how does this work for you. So being able to share a 1-page write-up focusing on how do you explain the concrete, the observations, the abstract generalizations, and the application to your new, to your experience, right? What you took away from it. So that's kind of what I'm looking for this exercise, just to kind of get your mind around the cold model and just at a smaller scale, kind of figuring out that 4-piece process in what we're going to be using basically this entire time we are together. And so I go through a couple of slides and talk about my personal experience. When I was 17, my parents, my family, including my younger siblings that are a lot younger than me, became Mormon. And this is nothing to do with the Mormon or the religion or anything like that. It was just that that was the experience. And it was more of like how my family separated from me. That was the transformation. That was different for me. So I kind of go through talking about, I basically went to college and my family started a new religion. And it was devastating to me because I was super confused. I had no idea like where I was supposed to go religious wise. Like, do I join them? Do I keep doing what I'm doing? Do I try something new? It was a big blur and I had no idea what to do. And so it took time to kind of figure that out. And so that's kind of what I go through. But using the cold model, the concrete is just details. It's like the newspaper article. Doesn't talk about feelings, doesn't talk about emotions. You just talk about what happened. The who, what, where, when, that's it. And so it can be really tricky to write that section because you do not involve your feelings or your emotions. You just talk about what happened. So you say like, my family saw a video, they responded, the church sent missionaries to their house, and we had our first meeting. It doesn't talk about anything about how they felt, what they were feeling, how awkward it was, none of that. It's just about what happened. That's what concrete is. Concrete details. That's it. Observations and reflections can kind of go into more emotional pieces and reflecting on, wow, I didn't realize how lost I was during that year because I thought I knew what my religion was, but it turned out I really didn't. Those types of things. It was hard because I had a rift between my family for a year and we didn't really know how to have a conversation, and that was difficult because I was so used to having that support system. Those types of sentences and paragraphs belong in observation reflection section. Okay, so then abstract generalization, that is where you talk about the I learned statements. What did you learn during that whole window, that whole process from start to finish? So you have to think about what you learned, and it can't be what you viewed other people learning, it's what you learned. So you can't say like, I learned how to, guide somebody through ADD or drug rehab, because you didn't go through drug rehab and you're not suffering through ADD. So it's about you. So if you went through drug rehab or you suffered through ADD or taking care of somebody maybe that suffered through ADD, you're talking about like the care components, which is different than the actual new, diagnoses. So keeping those separate. So figuring out what you learned through the process, which is a lot harder than it seems. And the challenging part of abstract generalization is that once you take your I learned statements, you have to turn them into abstract so that it can be useful for other people. So for example, if I talk about I learned that family has an enormous impact on how an individual is shaped, that's abstract because that could be used for someone else and not just my family, right? If I just said, I learned how my family was gravely impacted by this situation, I couldn't tell that to someone and they're like, oh yeah, I know what you mean. I know how to use that, right? So you're using these I learned statements as teachable moments. So if I said like, I really learned how to be vulnerable, that's me personally and that won't be useful to someone else. So if I said, I learned that vulnerability is key to communication, that's something that another person can use and say, okay, how do I become a good communicator? I can try vulnerability, right? So that's kind of how these abstract generalization statements are shifted from like an individual I learned to a more broad I learned. And that takes a lot of time. It's going to take us a few weeks to work on them. So don't feel like, I don't know how to do this. Just work on the individual I learned. Like in that scenario, keep it concrete if you need to and just say, I learned how to be a good communicator. And that's as far as I can go. And then I can start asking like, well, how did you become a good communicator? What skill, what tactic? And we can progress together with that. So that's all I'm going to say for that for now, because we have more to work on next week about it, because it's going to take time. And then the application process, we talk about how did you take this new learning and apply it into the future. So, for example, if I learned that family has an enormous impact on how an individual is shaped, how am I going to use that new knowledge in a future situation, right? So, for example, when I had my own family, right? I learned that with my family, and then I went out and had my own family with my own children and learned that, you know, the way our new family operates has a huge impact on how each individual is shaped for my kids. So how I parent my children is important. Learning how to be confident in the decisions I make. I learned that during this process because I had to pick my own religion and figure out how to do this on my own. And how did I use that decision making, that confidence in my decisions in the future, right? When I decided I didn't want to be, you know, go into law school and I wanted to become a teacher, like I had to be confident in that decision, even though I was, you know, directed towards something else. Like those are specific situations where I used that knowledge from this experience and used it in the future in a new experience. So that's what the application section is designed to do. And so that is all that I will be talking about. Today we have, we'll be posting on week 1, the reading and an example essay to kind of work through, and also in the discussion forum, please, if you have any questions, use the discussion forum because we have a big class, and go ahead and throw out a question in there and say like, I'm still not sure or clear about this. And one, it'll give me good questions to use for my next video, and also one another. You know, somebody might have the answer to that, or someone might be like, yeah, I have no idea how that works. I would love to know that. So again, it gives me a gauge to how to tailor these videos each week for you to be most beneficial. And again, please reach out via email. If you need to set up a Zoom chat or just, a phone call, I'm here. And I will try to keep these videos short, but this is a really, hard thinking class and it needs time. And so I want to be able to be as available and helpful as possible. So enjoy week 1. I will be around to help out, and it's a really great class. It's one of my favorites to teach, and I think we will have a good time during these next 8 weeks. Okay, till next week. See you soon.